Welcome Bronco Nation to my post-game review for Boise State versus BYU. That was a tough game. There's no other way to say it. We all watched the same game. We watched Boise State go out on the blue and lose big at home in front of a minimum crowd, playing with their third-string quarterback. And that's always hard to see. It's always hard to see the team go out there and not perform up to expectations, and it's always going to be hard to see a loss at the Blue, which has happened so rarely over the years. I think this is the 9th or 10th loss at home in the last 20 years. I might have my numbers wrong there. Either way, very, very few losses at home on the Blue. So there's a lot to digest here. The main point of this video is actually going to be very positive. There's a lot of positives here still on the season. The biggest point is that the season isn't over. There are a lot of things for Boise State fans to look forward to. There's a lot of things for Boise State fans to get their hopes up for, and there are 5 more games to play. So we're only on the 3rd game of the season. The season is not over. We lost the game to BYU, but that doesn't mean that it's game over. It doesn't even mean that Boise State's out of the run for the New Year's Six. All of these things I will address at the end of the video. The front end of the video, of course, we're going to have to address the play, the offense, the defense, special teams. We're going to assign grades to each of these. It's going to be a little rough, but the point is that there is positives to look at on the end here. So we're going to look at each of the 3 position groups. We're going to talk about what happened. We're not going to go too in depth into it, but we're just going to kind of skim over the top here, because I don't think that this game was not a true representation of who Boise State is. We all know that. And then the announcers kept going on about how this was a statement win for BYU. This wasn't a statement win for BYU against Boise State. This was a statement win for BYU against the Boise State seconds. The thirds even. This is not quite the scout team, but in the key positions, yes, the starters on the O-line, the wide receivers were still there. But when you lose starters in the backfield and at the quarterback position, that is going to dictate the entire game. And if you're onto your third-string quarterback, your chances of winning that game decrease significantly. And we'll talk about this as we go on, but the BYU win here over Boise State, it looked bad, but considering what we were going up against, it could have been a lot worse. And we're going to address that. So we're going to go through the offense, the defense, special teams, and we're going to see how Boise State played up to my 3 keys to the game. And then we're going to conclude with a review. What does the lookout the rest of the season look like for Boise State? First off, name another team in the country in the past 10 years that has had 2 straight seasons where they've had to go to their third-string quarterback. Whatever the luck bug going around with Boise State, and it's not on the coaches, it's not on anybody. It's just bad, unfortunate luck that 2 straight seasons now, Boise State has had to go to their third-string quarterback. Last season, Boise State lucked out with a gem in Jalen Henderson. This year, not that Cade Ferguson, not to negate his performance, but he's not ready quite yet for this stage. True freshman. And reality, he's not even the third-string quarterback. Remember, Chase Cord was supposed to be competing for the backup spot this year, but then he got injured again prior to the season. So really, Cade Ferguson is the 4th-string quarterback when you look at it that way. As far as the Boise State recruiting and the plans for the season, you had Bachmeier, the designated starter, you had Jack Sears, the transfer, and then you had Chase Cord hopefully going to be competing for that 2nd-string position, and one of those guys would be the 3rd string. And then Cade Ferguson, maybe he could take a redshirt year, wouldn't even see the field until next year. So what really happened with Boise State was down to their 4th and 5th string quarterback today. And that's what we're really looking at. So key injuries on the offense. Bachmeier out, not COVID. I was 100% sure that it was COVID, especially the circumstances involving him coming up to not playing, and the fact that Boise State had reported that 2 players got COVID and 2 starters didn't have it. I was 100% sure it was COVID, but he was on the sideline today. So unless he recovered and been cleared, but he wasn't feeling great, that it's probably not COVID. I mean, I can almost say definitely it's not COVID at this point. It's something else going on with Bachmeier, which is a lot more concerning because that means that if it's not COVID, COVID's 2 weeks and you're back in. When it's not COVID, now it becomes a little bit more serious. So our thoughts and prayers are going to be going to Bachmeier. We're going to be monitoring that situation very closely. Second big injury out was George Helani. without George Helani out, this was probably the biggest injury of all of them before Jack Sears got injured. But coming into the game, without Helani in the game, Boise State just doesn't have a run game. Van Buren, he plays hard. He plays physical. He doesn't get tackled for loss. He always falls forward. But on 10 carries for 44 yards, he had only 2.8 yards per carry. When he hits the wall, he's going to fall forward, but he's not going to get those extra churning yards. He's not going to beat you on a run to the outside. He's not going to get that extra juke, that juke moves to get to the second or third level and get out there, breaking out of the running game into the secondary like Helani is. And we saw that. Boise State even going to Khalil Shakir today to run the ball. Without Helani in there, it becomes all on the quarterback. Now, if that quarterback is Jack Sears, an incredible, probably professional talent, then that's fine. Boise State can still ink by. But when you're on to your third, really fourth string, true freshman quarterback, it's not going to do great things. So the biggest injury in all of this was George Helani. We're hoping that he's going to come back. Boise State hasn't made a season-ending injury statement for him, which is what Boise State does when their players aren't going to come back. I expect him to come back. I've been in contact with some people who expect him to come back. I don't know how soon, but hopefully at some point in the season, because really without him, we don't have a running game. And that really was the biggest factor, because even if you're going to a third or fourth string quarterback, if you've got a running back that you can rely on and lean on to lead the team and push and take pressure off of you, I think Boise State could still have been competitive in this game, even with Sears out if Helani had been in the game. But that just wasn't the case today. Octavius Evans also banged up. Not a leading receiver for Boise State, but definitely a key part of the offense, especially this year, key part of the offense. Already has a touchdown. Key part of the offense. He's out. And then, of course, the second drive of the game on what was almost definitely a targeting call missed. Jack Sears just pushing it up for a quarterback sneak. How many times do you see a quarterback get hurt on a quarterback sneak up the middle for 1 to 2 yards? That almost never happens, but their linebacker came flying out of the backfield, dived head first right at Jack Sears, looked like he was going through some kind of concussion protocol, something like that. He was definitely holding his head and neck area, so hopefully we'll have him back next week, and hopefully it's not something more serious, but that he's out of the game. And at that point, I think a lot of us at that point, we realized this was not going to be the game that we thought it would be when we were preparing to watch Boise State this week. And of course, after that, it kind of everything dictated off of that moment. So at that moment, BYU was no longer playing Boise State. They were playing Boise State's backups. And at that point, it became a completely different matchup. And that's going to impact how people look at this game. And I'll talk about that at the end here. So looking at Cade Ferguson's performance, 15 of 26, 182 yards, 2 touchdowns, those 2 touchdowns coming late in the game, interception and a fumble. The biggest thing for Cade Ferguson is he just didn't look ready for this stage yet. He looked like he had some potential, especially late throwing when he started kind of getting into a rhythm, but I don't think the plan was to play him this year. The plan is, give him a redshirt year, or maybe a couple of games late playing time, warm him up, get him ready for the stage in a year or 2 years when Bachmeier and Sears are gone. Then he's ready to step up and be that man for Boise State. But right now, he definitely wasn't ready. And the biggest thing for that is he wouldn't stay in the pocket. BYU was only pushing 3 guys almost the entire game. And the offensive line actually did a pretty good job blocking for Cade Ferguson and for Andy Peters. The offensive line actually did a pretty good job blocking. All Cade Ferguson had to do was take a couple of steps up into the pocket, and he would have been fine. They were all pushing to the outside. He would have had another 3 or 4 seconds. The roots could have developed, and he could have looked downfield to throw that ball. But what he did almost every single time that they brought, I wouldn't say pressure, but every single time that the ball was snapped, he was running to the outsides. As soon as he started to push in, he ran right into where the defenders were coming, and that's why he was always off key. He was always throwing off his back foot or on the run, and he never got to really set his feet, aside from a couple of throws there at the end. Never really got to set his feet, never got to stay calm, keep his eyes downfield, and that was really the big factor today. And then also just kind of looking at his performance overall, even in those 2 touchdowns late, they were still underthrown balls. So Khalil Shakir did a great job of coming back for the ball on both of those to come and make the touchdowns catches. But even on the third one that we saw him going through, Khalil Shakir was wide open by 3 or 4 yards, well, probably 3 yards, and he underthrew it, and Khalil Shakir had to come back for it, in which case the defender got in the way. So even on those two, he still didn't seem settled. He seemed rushed. He wasn't getting into the pocket, looking downfield, making the good throw with a good setting. So, this is not a quarterback who's ready right now to lead Boise State. I think he has that potential down the road, depending on how the coaching goes with him. But this is not a quarterback who is necessarily ready right now for this stage. And as I said, he was intended to be the fourth string quarterback, so that's what should be expected. So really, for the performance for a fourth string quarterback was incredible. Incredible performance for a fourth string quarterback, just not enough to get over BYU. And I don't think that was going to happen today. So Andy Peters, and then another thing with this, it was interesting. Cade Ferguson struggling a little bit, but he seems to be settling a little bit into the game. And then right when that's happening, coach is throwing Andy Peters with plenty of time left in the third quarter. Boise State still within striking distance, so they're down by about 4 touchdowns at that point, but not completely out of the game necessarily. I mean, it's not the fourth quarter where it's 0 chances, and they throw in Andy Peters, and if Cade Ferguson didn't look ready, Andy Peters definitely didn't look ready yet. He didn't. There's no way he expected to play. Probably minimal snaps, mostly with maybe the scout team coming into this. 4 of 8, 41 yards. Didn't look settled at all. Boise actually ended up going back to Cade Ferguson, and that's when they started having success. I think they should have just kept Cade Ferguson in there all the way through and seen what he could do. I think he was really starting to warm up to the game. Interesting call swapping him out there. I don't think it did him any favors at all. There were, however, in all of this injury mess, there were some bright spots for Boise State. Boise State kept going back to the tight ends, which I really liked. Especially, I think, first throw of the game from Sears was a pass to John Bates. Great pass. So the Titans had 7 catches for 70 yards, 7 receptions today. And we saw number 3, Jalen Smith, getting his first receptions as well of the season. So I really like that Boise State keeps going to the tight ends. That's something that they've been building on, and that's great. Secondly, Shakir just had one of his season high bests through 3 games, one of his career high bests, really. 10 receptions, 139 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he recovered the onside kick. And that's what you want to see. Even when the game is completely out of reach, BYU's up by 45-3, I think, was that when Boise State started scoring. BYU's in the fourth quarter. There's no way that Boise State's going to be able to come back, but their star players are still fighting that. That's what you want to see. You want to see that competition, that drive, that never quit attitude, no matter what the score. The scoreboard's always 0-0, and you're always going for that punch-in touchdown. And Shakir he showed that, which was incredible, very impressive. So grading the offense overall, it's going to have to be an F overall. But I think there were some good moments within the offense, and it's not really the offense's fault that this happened. This was not something any coach would have planned for or been able to prepare or plan for. And as soon as Jack Sears went out, at that point it was pretty much over, especially without having Helani in there. So great effort by the offense overall. The grades are really meaningless in this circumstance. So that's the grade for the offense. Moving on to the defense, I thought besides that first touchdown, which was really mostly poor eye discipline, the entire defense ran to the left. And the running back just pushed it right up the middle. I mean, it was just a straight run up the middle. I'm not entirely sure what they were looking at there, but ran to left, completely blocked out, 80-plus yard, 87-yard touchdown run right off the bat there. So, but after that, the defense really settled down. They really settled down. The first half only allowed 16 points, despite BYU getting the ball on an interception and a fumble inside of the Boise State 40. In the first half, the BYU offense only comes away with 16 points. At the end of the first half, Boise State's still in this game, 3-16, which they really should have been down by 2 more touchdowns instead of an extra point, missed field goal, whatever a field goal is. They should have really been down 24-3 or more. So I thought the defense actually played really, really solid at the beginning of the game there, but they just got gassed as the game went on. There were 4 drives. There were sorry, I did write it down here. So first half, there were 4 straight drives that the offense came off the field without any kind of points, straight into the defense's hands. And then in the second half, there were 3 straight drives of 6 plays or less. So basically, the defense on the offensive side, 6 plays or less. So the defense is just going out there, drive after drive after drive, and it showed. Great play in the first half for the most part, and in the second half, they just got worn down. Players that would usually be making solid tackles are doing not wrapping up. They're bouncing off, or they're just touching, and the guy's going for more yards so that on the touchdown run, or the just too much time in the pocket there, not able to get through. Though Boise State did have 3 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. A lot of that pressure in the first half, but you force them into 3rd and long, and then Zach Wilson scrambling around. The defense is just gassed. Throws a long pass to set them up short of on the BYU side of the 50. So it was a tough game for the defense. And also them also injured, also down their star defensive end, Dimitri Washington, out for the game. There were a couple of really close picks that we'll talk about. Whitney and Wimpy both had shots, really good shots, and missed them. It was a really, really tough performance, tough game. Performance overall, I thought overall the defense actually played really well, but there were moments of inconsistency. So, these 3 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, multiple quarterback hits, and yet they're still gashing them, or Zach Wilson's having all day to throw on certain downs, and that becomes a difference. So he's hurried every other down, but on the 7th or 8th down, he's got all time to throw, and he can throw it deep. And that was another thing with the secondary. The secondary actually played pretty well, especially in the first half, forcing him to Zach Wilson hold on the ball and get sacked. But inconsistency, and that's going to be the biggest word for the defense today. Inconsistency. 7 plays of 20-plus yards given up today by the defense, and I think all of that stems from the offense not being able to put together drives. All of the performance today stems from Jack Sears being knocked out, Helani not being in the game to start with, and Jack Sears being knocked out in the first quarter. All of that, I think today, if the defense had been, if the offense had been on the field, scoring drives, not putting all the pressure on the defense, I think that this would have been, defense maybe gives up 24, 30 points, max. And Boise State gets out of here with a win. But that was not what we saw today. 51 points by BYU and only 17 by Boise State. So overall defensive performance is going to be an F again. But again, this is not typical of the Boise State defense. This is not defining of the Boise State defense so far this season or going forward. This all stems off of unfortunate circumstances beyond Boise State's control. So, like I said, F for the offense, F for the defense, but not typical, not defining of Boise State, and not something that we're going to see, I think, at all going for the rest of the season or really in their hands today. Special teams was actually one bright moment for Boise State. Of course, Joel Velasquez, starting punter, out. Gavin Well in his place, cousin of the standout Boise State punter, one of the best Boise State punters all time, Sean Well. He just received the All-Decade Punter not quite a award, but he was nominated to the All-Decade as the All-Decade Punter for Boise State by Boise State University. He had 2 really great. Well, he had one really great punt that ended in the 5, and then he had one really lucky punt that he dropped the snap, and he still got it off, and that one rolled inside the 4. That one's a little bit more chalked up to luck, but he still, on 7 punts, he averaged 39.4 yards, along of 48. He did have the punt blocked, and I was actually writing it down as a note before the punt block, is he just seemed to be holding onto the ball far too long, and that ended. I mean, of course, the up men didn't give him any help when letting the defense come straight through, but he was holding the ball for just too long today, and that's being kind of forced into the role that he's not the starter. I think he has talent. I think that he's going to be a great punter for Boise State. Maybe not the leg of his cousin, but definitely very, very accurate for definitely a punter that can get those lock the other team back deep in their own 10 or 5. Very accurate punter. So maybe not the leg. He had a long of 48 today. So maybe not the leg of his cousin quite yet, but he needs to get the ball off quicker. Other than that, other than the blocked punt, overall the performance was very well. Kickoff coverage for both the punt and the punt return and the kick return was very good. A big hit by number 0, laying out the return man on a kickoff. And of course, Dalmez, we'll get to his kicking in a second here, but on onside kicks, he kicked 2 of the most beautiful onside kicks I have ever seen. First one recovered by Khalil Shakir. Second one, Boise State had a real shot at recovering. It just ended up mistiming the jump a little bit and it went away. But if Boise State ever gets into a situation where they need to get an onside kick, I am more confident with Dalmas kicking an onside kick than I've ever been for any team kicking an onside kick. Incredible. And we've got a kicker in Dalmas. We don't know necessarily if he's got the deep leg, but my gosh, with that 39 yards from the left hash for a right-footed kicker is the hardest kick to make. And he nailed it right in the middle. Probably would have, it was right there at the top of the goalpost. Probably would have been good from 45 plus. Looked incredible. First field goal that he's attempted of the season, so he's 1 of 1. Great job by Dalmas. So overall here, I'm trying to make sure I don't miss anything else. Yeah, just great. And his kickoffs were really great too. Dalmas was a real bright spot. I think the kicking overall, Gavin Well, and the kickoff coverage, real bright spot for the Broncos. B- today, just because of that blocked punt. But, other than blocked punt, it would be a solid A. Great performance overall. So let's look at the 3 keys to the game and how Boise State did against those. So, firstly, secondary needs to step up. Again, I think they played pretty good overall, but there were too many big plays allowed. It's kind of been a pattern for Boise State against BYU in the losses, at least, or at least in the loss last year. But again, I don't think that this was their fault. I think that the cornerbacks for Boise State are incredibly talented, probably some of the best in the Mountain West, and all of it stemmed off of being on the field too long and the offense not being able to get any drives going. So, that's going to be a D, I think. And I think a D is generous, especially because I think their overall play was very, very, very good, but just too many big plays given up. Forced turnovers. Didn't get that done today, so that's going to be an F. But Boise State was really, really close. I think Zach Wilson's first pass, Whitney almost had a one-handed catch. He had the ball in his hand, and it would have been really impressive. I'm not blaming him for missing it, but it would have been real impressive if he'd gotten it. Almost intercepted that. And then Wimpy, he had a straight-out drop. He's going to need to work on those tip drills this weekend, this week, coming into next week, because he had a ball bounce right in his chest that he dropped, which he probably would have returned for a touchdown. He was out on the outside. The ball's bouncing around, goes from the offensive player to the defender, off of the defender's helmet, and then into Wimpy's hands, and he's in a standing position, ready to run, and he just just drops to the turf. And that probably would have been a touchdown. That would have been in the first half, after BYU had scored their first touchdown, so now they're up 23-3. BYU, if Wimpy had been able to get that and return that for a touchdown, it would have been 10-23 with a lot of momentum. I think the game could have changed. Boise State might have had a chance to be in this one. So real crucial drop there. Of course, Wimpy, it's on the fly. I don't think any of us probably, at our skill levels, you would be able to catch that, and he's an incredibly skilled and talented player. So not blaming him, just commenting that it was a bad drop in the moment, and it was really close to being a pick. So Jonah Dalmez needs to prove his mettle. A. Solid A. Only 1 of 1 on field goals. Didn't end up being that close game of the kicking game. And that's just because the offense just didn't have any ability to push the ball down the field besides those 2 drives where they kind of got, I wouldn't say lucky. They played well But, besides those 2 drives we were able to put in the touchdown, weren't really able to be consistent today. So it didn't become a close game where field goals were going to become key. But Dalmas, I think he definitely proved his mettle today. 1 of 1 on the long field goal, on the 2 onside kicks, which was beautiful. Great player for Boise State. So that is the negative out of the way. Negative out of the way. Let's look at the positives of Boise State. As I said at the beginning of this video, the season is not over for Boise State. So first off, what's the goal every Boise State season? Win the conference. That's what the players will tell you. That's what the coaches will tell you. When I've talked to the one chance I did get to talk to Coach Harsin his first year with Boise State, and I'm all getting rooped up as a fan, saying, hey, maybe we can challenge for playoffs, and he just said, yeah, that'd be great. Goals to win the conference, and that's what it's going to be for Boise State, and they can still do that. BYU, independent, not on the conference. Boise State can go 7-1, 8-1 with a conference win, championship win, and win the conference. So that goal is still on the table, and that's huge for Boise State. Secondly, Boise State is not out of competition for the New Year's Six. The playoff committee has said that when they look at a team's performance, they factor in injuries. So if you're playing really well, you're undefeated, you're Clemson with Trevor Lawrence, you're undefeated, and then you get to the end of the season and Trevor Lawrence goes down, gets injured. I'm not addressing this specific situation, I'm just hypothetical. Trevor Lawrence goes down, gets injured. The playoff committee, if they have Clemson at number 1 at that point, may push them back to 3 or 4, depending on how key the player that got injured was. And that goes both ways. When you're playing a big game that you end up losing because you weren't playing with your starting quarterback, the playoff committee is going to look at that too. They're going to evaluate that game based on what were the factors. And obviously this was not Boise State as they are as a team playing in this game without their number 1 running back, their 2 top quarterbacks. There's defined starter with Bachmeier, and there definitely could be a starter toss-up Jack Sears, 2 best players on the team out. And then you add in Octavius Evans and Dimitri Washington. But those are key positions, and the committee is going to look at that. So the key for Boise State right now is just to win out. Win out, dominate. If Boise State gets Sears or Bachmeier back and they dominate in the rest of their games going forward, the committee is going to look at this game in light of what happened with the injuries. So Boise State is still going to need, they're definitely going to need one of those group of 5 teams ahead of them, all of those group of 5 teams ahead of them to get a loss for the committee to really start considering Boise State. But assuming all those other teams have 1 loss coming in, Boise State is still in control of their destiny going going forward in the season. So as I said, 5 games. Committee's going to come out with their rankings late November. I think we have 2 or 3 games before that. I'm not entirely sure how the schedule shakes out, but let's see. It's the first week. I think it's coming out 30. So I think we got 2 more games before the committee comes out. 2 opportunities to impress and show them this game was not so much a fluke because our players weren't there, but not definitive of what Boise State actually is. Second thing, if BYU keeps winning, which I think they will, I think we were the only team, if we had our starters, we were the only team that could really challenge them on the schedule. BYU wins out with a win over Boise State, especially if Boise State wins out and gets back into the rankings. With a win over Boise State, BYU is going to be in that conversation. I'm not making a statement either way, but they're going to be in that conversation to be considered for the playoffs, and they're definitely going to be highly ranked. So that's going to look good for Boise State. Only loss, and it wasn't even a loss with the full team out there. That's going to be a factor as well. The third thing to consider here, and really it's actually, there's 2 more things. The third thing to consider here is San Jose State. San Jose State had a very impressive win over undefeated San Diego State today, 28-17, without even their starting quarterback. They're talking about quarterback injuries. They're actually under their second-string quarterback. Luckily for them, it's only their second-string quarterback. They had a very impressive win against San Diego State. They're now 3-0. And they are going to play UNLV and Fresno State. I think they're going to catch the eyes of a lot of voters right now. I think that they're going to have a chance to, with the wins over UNLV and Fresno State, to be ranked coming into Boise State. So the Boise State game. So when Boise State plays them, that's a chance to get that top 25 win. There's a second chance. Nevada is undefeated right now. If Nevada can win out, which they have looked very, very strong so far, very strong. If Nevada can win out and be undefeated, they're probably going to pop in the rankings. And without any divisions this year, well, regardless, Boise State would probably play them with the division. But without any divisions this year, the top two teams are going to play each other. Boise State, if Nevada get that win over San Jose State, the last game, one of the last games of the season, I think it was the last game of the season. If Nevada can get that win over San Jose State, be undefeated, and Boise State's playing them, that's a second top 25 team. And then that would have Boise State with two potential top 25 team wins, a loss to BYU, who's probably very highly ranked, with a team that was not fully put on the field against BYU. All of those things are going to factor in the committee. So this season is not over, Boise State fans. Have hope, keep pushing. Number one goal, win the conference. Number two goal, win out. So those two kind of be the same thing. But the number three thing is just dominating in the rest of our games. If we can dominate going on, we get our players back. Going to be lots of prayers for Sears and Bachmeyer and Helani and Octavius Evans. And Stefan Kopp got hurt as well. He's shown a lot of promise. Hasn't really been incorporated into the offense as much yet, but he also got hurt late in the game. Dimitri Washington, get those players back, especially the key players with Helani and either Bachmeyer or Sears. Either one of those guys will do. Get those players back going forward. This is still a very, very special season and a weird COVID season. It's kind of a freebie season anyway for college football. Just the way everything's shaken out. A lot of opportunities for Boise State going forward. I know this was a long video, but it's important, I think, to address what really is the potential for Boise State. And I don't think it would really have been possible with a shorter video here. So we've addressed thoroughly the game. We addressed thoroughly the keys to the game and how they lined up. And we're looking at a very positive scenario for Boise State going forward. So thank you for listening to me today. Please join Bronco Nation Updates, the Facebook page, so that we can all root our Broncos on together. We have over 8,000 fans there. We root our Broncos on together as they proceed with this season that is not over by a long shot, and there's a lot to look forward to. All right, Bronco Nation, I'm very hopeful, very positive for this season. There's a lot to look forward to. Go Big Blue!